Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video, doing Gaza MS Sunday Round Up for today's second video. So it's going to be your usual Sunday afternoon eclectic mix of this and that. We're going to be looking at things like solar activity, sea surface temperature, anomalies, what's going on with El Nino in the Pacific Ocean, and of course we will have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days as well. So sit back, enjoy on your Sunday afternoon. I just say that we released some spring analogues earlier on today, so the third spring analogues update is currently on the homepage at Gaza MS and will be placed on the spring updates and forecast page later on this evening with a written summary for anyone that can't watch the video. Really quite an interesting watch. I think it's looking at springs that are occurring either just before or just after solar minimum, so have a look at that and to see what's going on there. And then of course later on this afternoon we're going to have February's ECMWF, Meteo France and DWD seasonal model updates. So that's going to take us through the spring and into the summer. That'll be coming up around 3-4 o'clock this afternoon. Probably do Ensemble's watch tonight, so a busy old day to Gaza. There's a lot to get through. So before I do anything else, I'll just say a big thank you to our latest PayPal donors. So we've had a new donation for Gaza MS. So I'm going to say thank you to Simon Lightbrown. Simon Lightbrown has become Gaza MS' latest PayPal donor. So a big thank you to Simon for doing that. If you would like to become a donor for Gaza MS, then all you need to do is come to Gaza MS' PayPal page. I'm on that page right now. Sign in to your PayPal account. And then you give a one-off donation to Gaza MS. You'll get a shout-out in video. We'll say thank you very much to you, unless you'd rather stay anonymous, in which case that's absolutely fine. Just leave a little note with your donation to tell us. And we'll say something like thank you to this anonymous donor. There's also Patreon as well. So if you'd like to become a patron for Gaza MS, we currently have 60 patrons. So if you would like to become a patron for Gaza MS, then all you need to do is come to the Gaza MS Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and then you can give an ongoing monthly donation to Gaza MS. You're helping us to pay for the website. So a big thank you to all of the PayPal donors. A big thank you to all of our patrons. Special hello to all of the donors and patrons for Gaza MS on this Sunday afternoon. And you're doing something really special for Gaza MS by doing that. So a big thank you to all of you. Special thank you to Simon Lightbrown. And yeah, so really big thank you to all of you for doing that. Right, let's get on with the video then. We're going to start off by having a look at solar activity. So this is how things are looking on the solar disk on our side of the disk today from solarham.net. We've got another spotless solar disk. There are no sunspots whatsoever across the solar disk on our side of the disk right now. Therefore, solar activity is at very low levels and will be staying at very low levels, or is forecast to stay at very low levels for the next 3 days at Solar Ham. This is the Gaza MS Sunday Roundup Solar Activity Tracker, updated to today, 17th of February, by a good friend, James Ackrell. James sent this through last night. So this is how things are looking with solar activity. We are really at a very low level indeed. You can see the orange line is depicting each individual day's sunspots. You can see we are in quite a long run now this February of spotless conditions, no sunspots at all. So the orange line is just kind of like flatlining away on the floor of the chart. So really since the 3rd of February, and now we're up to the 17th of February, haven't had any sunspots at all. This is the kind of thing that happens when you're in solar minimum. You get extended periods without any sunspots whatsoever. Sometimes they can go on for several months actually without any sunspots when you reach true solar minimum. Excuse me. The trend lines, which are the thick green and thick red lines, they are flatlining away as well. So everything there is telling us that we remain at a really, really low level of solar activity. And this chart that James has also done for us for today, that one really shows how the decline of the solar activity is taking place over the past 2 or 3 years. So this is going back to December 2015 and up to the present day. So you can see just how solar activity, sunspots have declined over the past couple of years as we've moved from coming out of solar maximum into the solar minimum. So back in 2015-16, this is where we was here with our daily sunspots. You can see that many days we're getting sort of large amounts of activity. Although this is a weak solar cycle overall, solar cycle 24 has been a very weak cycle. So although it looks like quite dramatic activity, actually it is at the lower end of what you tend to see in a normal solar cycle. This is one of the weakest solar cycles for a century. But you can see from where we was in 2015-16 here to where we are right now, you can see that there's a real decline that's taking place in solar activity and sunspots. Of course, this spike just here, that's the final sort of burst of really quite strong solar activity that we've had for this solar cycle. It's back in at the start of September 2017, and then since then we have collapsed down into solar minimum. We are at solar minimum now. We won't know when we have come out of solar minimum until it's happened, so I suspect we've got another 6 to 12 months to go at solar minimum, and then we will move into the new solar cycle number 25. But we won't know when that's happened until it's happened, so we can't forecast really when that's going to happen. We'll just know when it's actually taking place, when the true solar minimum of solar cycle number 24 happen. So yeah, we're at a very low level of solar activity. We will remain at a very low level of solar activity as well. The reason we look at this is that there is a connection between low levels of solar activity and an increased risk of northern blocking within the northern latitudes, and blocking is a route pushing cold air out of the North Pole and down into the mid-latitudes. So for Europe particularly, I think it's less convincing for America and for Asia, but for Europe in particular, we do seem to see a connection between being at solar minimum or just after solar minimum and having a greater chance, no more than that, it's like loading the dice, a greater chance, but not a guarantee, of colder winters. We will keep an eye on the solar activity over the next few weeks, months, of course, in the Gaza MS Sunday Round Up. And a big thank you to James for sending through the solar trackers for us. Probably going to do Solar Sunday on Easter Sunday, by the way, so that's going to be in April. This is how Siberian snow cover and Eurasian snow cover was looking at on the 1st of February, so the first day of this month. You can see that most parts of certainly Russia were covered with snow, and that snow was pushing well into Europe as well. We actually did have a little bit of snow into the UK, especially down in southern parts of the UK and in the southwest of the UK too. All of Scandinavia covered, many parts of Europe from France and Germany eastwards covered with snow as well. So that was how things were looking on the 1st of February. This is the latest, up to the 16th of February. You can see we have lost a lot of snow from Europe. So we still have almost universal cover across Russia, as you would expect, of course. Most of Scandinavia is still snow covered as well, although southern parts of Sweden have lost their snow cover. But really from sort of the eastern Europe back into central western parts of Europe, most of the snow cover has gone away from sort of alpine regions. Obviously the snow is still there over the Alps, but most parts of central and eastern Europe have lost their snow cover right way back to these far eastern countries. We do still see some snow cover there, but a real decline in snow cover taking place across Europe from the start of the month to where we are right now. So some of that might come back over the next few weeks, but I suspect most of the snow cover from the winter of 18-19 has probably gone now, particularly from central parts of Europe, and it will be a case of gradually waiting to see Scandinavian parts of Russia then beginning to lose their snow cover, which will happen, of course, as we get further on into the spring and into the summer. Sea surface temperature anomalies next. So this is how things were looking in terms of sea surface temperature anomalies we did last week's GWV Sunday Round Up. So 3 areas of interest. We've got the Equatorial Pacific Ocean just here, the ENSO region. We've got the Northern Pacific up there, and then we've got the Northern Atlantic over here. Let's deal with the ENSO region first of all. So that's how things were looking last week when we did last week's Sunday Round Up. This is the very latest. Very little change actually in the ENSO region over the past week. We haven't seen either much warming of the ocean or much cooling of the Equatorial Pacific Ocean either. So things very stable, very static at this sort of borderline weak El Nino to ENSO neutral position that we've been in really since the start of the year. So very stable there. Further north in the Northern Pacific, again, that was how things were looking last week. This is how things are looking this week. So again, very little change. The Pacific Ocean is very stable, not much changing over past week. And in the Atlantic, again, that's how things looked in the Atlantic last week. This is how things are looking now. Again, very little change. We've still got this warmer area here down in the tropical Atlantic. Otherwise, across central and northern parts of the Atlantic Ocean, sea surface temperature anomalies. So not deviating too far from average. Still a little bit on the colder than average side in some of these areas just here to the south of Greenland. So that has weakened from where it was like at the end of last year. It's quite cold around that part of the northern Atlantic Ocean at the end of last year. It has warmed up a bit, but we still see those cooler areas of sea surface temperature anomalies becoming a little bit milder through, a little bit warmer I should say, with sea surface temperature anomalies through the Med as well. Still generally a little bit on the cold and average side, but they are warming up a bit, I think, as of course conditions are warming up. They're shallow water, so they will change with the air temperature very quickly through like the Bay of Biscay into the Mediterranean Sea. They'll go up and down with the changing weather conditions. So as it's warming up across many parts of Europe at the moment, expect those to get a lot milder, I would have thought, in the next month or so. SOI is quite interesting. This is the Southern Oscillation Index for the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia. So the Southern Oscillation Index is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state in the South Pacific. It's looking at the air pressures between Darwin and Tahiti. When the SOI is in its negative phase, the atmospheric setup is reflective of El Nino. It's reflective of an El Nino setup. When the SOI is in its positive phase, the SOI will be, the atmosphere is like reflective of a La Nina, of a cold event. Remember, all of these indexes are just reflections of the atmospheric states. They're not driving anything in their own terms. We've got into quite a pronounced period of negativity of the SY at a point where you probably expect us to be coming away from negativity of the SY. So what normally happens is with El Nino is that it reaches its peak around Christmas and then it gradually weakens through the second part of the Northern Hemisphere winter and into the spring. So at this point, you would probably be expecting the SOI to actually be moving away from its negative phase. But it looks like it's strengthening negativity at the moment. So going back to the 1st of February, this is how the SOI was looking on the 1st of February, plus 6.96. So that's an atmospheric state that's reflective of, it's reflective of a La Nina, actually. But coming up to more recent days, we have had some very negative numbers starting to appear. So, for example, on the 8th of February, the SOI goes down to minus 10.33. On the 11th of February, we go down to minus 19.02. And on the 13th of February, we go down to minus 25.22. And that's increasing even more. So the 16th of February goes down to minus 24, and the very latest number for the 17th of February, that goes down to minus 29.88. That's a very, very negative SOI indeed. So the atmosphere in the Southern Ocean has very much gone into an El Nino phase during February. If that continues, we can probably expect to see strengthening of the El Nino across the Central Pacific Ocean. We probably expect to see those warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies getting warmer, if anything, through the Equator-Pacific Ocean, which is quite unusual for that to happen in February, because as I say, normally February is a month where we're coming off an El Nino, and same is true for La Nina as well. They both tend to reach their peak around Christmas, and then they'll decline through the first months of the year. So quite unusual what's going on there. It may be a sign that we're going to see strengthening of El Nino as we're going into the spring. But of course, that would be something very unusual to do. You would normally go back to ENSO neutral during the spring. So we just have to keep an eye on it. It may just be a temporary situation, this negative burst of the Southern Oscillation Index, and it could well be that the atmospheric state will begin to revert back towards ENSO neutral as we go into the spring. We should keep a close eye on it. We've got the February ENSO update coming up on Friday evening at GWV. Arctic oscillation is looking like this. This is the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart. The black line tells us where we've been with the Arctic oscillation. Red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. Same as with the Southern Oscillation Index. The Arctic oscillation is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state, this time over the Arctic, over North Pole, as opposed to kind of like the South Pacific. So this is showing that when the Arctic oscillation, when the AO is in its positive phase, you'll tend to have low pressure up over the North Pole. You'll keep cold air bottled up in the North Pole, usually when the AO is positive. Conversely, when the AO is negative, you'll tend to have high pressure blocking up over the North Pole. Up until a couple of weeks ago, around a week ago, we was actually having quite a negative Arctic oscillation winter. Generally, we've been trending neutral to negative through most of this winter with the Arctic oscillation. That's the 1st of February just there. Really very negative indeed with the Arctic oscillation. But since then, since the start of February, Arctic oscillation has been trending into a positive phase. That's where we are right now, very positive with the Arctic oscillation. So the Arctic oscillation has flipped through February from a negative phase to a positive phase. GFS ensembles are forecasting us to stay positive with the AO, in fact become even more positive in the next week. Then a decline taking place through the final days of February and into the beginning of March. We do see a decline in the Arctic oscillation being forecast, but probably most of those ensemble members are still remaining on the positive side with the AO. We do have a few that are going down into negative territory, but not really that convincing. It looks like we have entered into a positive phase of the Arctic oscillation, and this could carry us through into certainly the early part of the spring anyway, so it could be that February, maybe March, are going to be positive AO months. These indexes tend to move in blocks of sort of 2-3 months. So we've had a couple of months, 2 or 3 months of the negativity of the AO. We could be going into 2 or 3 months of generally positive AO territory. But you can get a few days that deviate from the trend, of course. North Atlantic oscillation observed and forecast chart looks like this. So the black line again tells us where we've been with the NAO, red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles forecasting the NAO to go. Although the winter of 2018-19 up to February has generally been a negative AO winter, at the same time it's generally been a positive NAO winter. So again, the NAO is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state, this time looking at the North Atlantic. So when the NAO is positive, you'll tend to have a westerly setup across the Atlantic. You'll tend to have low pressure around Iceland, high pressure in the Azores, and this is the default setup really for the North Atlantic Ocean and for Europe. A positive NAO is like our default setup, which is why our prevailing wind direction in the UK is west or southwesterly. When the NAO is negative, you'll tend to have high pressure around Iceland and low pressure through the Azores. So a negative NAO, particularly if it's combined with a negative AO, they are two signposts for colder weather, if you like. So we've had the two indexes out of sync generally this winter. The AO has been in a negative phase until February. The NAO has been in a positive phase up until where we are right now. It's stayed in a positive phase, actually. So at the moment, the two indexes have synced together. They're both in positive territory. That's where we are right now with the NAO on the positive side of neutral. GFS ensembles are forecasting the NAO to trend a little bit negative over the next week. Haven't seen much of that. The last time we went negative with the NAO was for a few days around the new year. It's only going to last a few days, though, and then it looks like we're bouncing back up into positive territory with the NAO once again, if the GFS ensembles are right. So overall, we can get a few days, as we see there, but deviate from the trend. But overall, it looks like the trend at the moment is for both the NAO and the AO to be in positive territory. And this is likely going to continue mild, maybe even very mild weather right way through the rest of February. GFS upper air temperature and precipitation ensembles look like that. Looking at Buxton today, one of the highest towns in England, and this is another suggested location for our list of the suggested locations for this section of the video. And big thank you to all of you for suggesting your local towns and cities. We are compiling a new list now. We're getting through the old list that we have, so we're compiling a new list for suggested locations. So if you want to see your town or city featured in this section of video, do let me know where you'd like to see, and we'll put you on the list. So red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Buxton. We're starting much milder than average at the moment, so we're pretty warm. The temperatures are going to be dropping back closer to average in the next couple of days, so it will cool down a little bit, sort of Monday, Tuesday. Temperatures will be close to average, probably still on the mild side, but getting closer to average, but then taking off again in the second half of this week and into next weekend, going into another prolonged spell of mild, very mild, potentially even quite warm weather. We might break records here as we get through to next weekend. It is uncertain, but it's not out of the question. But we might see temperature records going in around a week's time. As we get very close to the all-time February maximum temperature record, which is 19.7, set in 1998. It's not impossible that that record could go in around a week's time. Now, as we get through to the very end of February into the start of March's period, just here we do see the temperature ensembles are dropping. They're declining, so it looks like it's cooling down in towards the start of March. Nothing particularly dramatic. There are one or two cold outlier members just here, but then that's been the case all the way through the winter in the extended part of the GFS ensembles. We have always been seeing these cold outlier members, and they've never really come to a great deal, other than in the last couple of weeks of January, I suppose, when it did get quite cold. But it looks like temperature is going to decline as we get through to the beginning of March, but not necessarily going all that cold, maybe just going back closer to average. Probably do ensembles watch tonight to see what these ensemble members are showing for the beginning of March. As far as precipitation is concerned, it remains very dry. That's the ongoing story about this winter, really, other than the mild temperatures. It's been the fact it's been a very dry winter as well. Mild and dry is an unusual combination for winter. Normally, if the winter is dry, it will tend to be quite cold. And then if the winter is wet, it will tend to be mild, of course, as the rain-bearing systems come in from off the Atlantic. So mild and dry is quite an unusual combination for the winter in the UK, but that's what we've had this winter, and that goes on. Very dry conditions continuing right way through to the beginning of March. Temperature anomalies from the 17th to the 25th of February, much milder than average for the UK and Ireland. Most parts of Europe are coming out very mild as well. Precipitation anomalies, look at that, very, very dry yet again from the 17th to the 25th of February, but prolonged dry a mild spell goes on. Over in America, the southeastern part of the state is looking quite warm, but actually most parts of the states through central and western areas anyway, looking very cold. That's where winter is biting up there in the north and northwest of America. Much colder than average there. Precipitation anomalies in the states from the 17th to 25th of February, generally a little bit above average through most areas. And where it's cold, of course, out here in the west, I assume a lot of that precipitation, therefore, is likely to be snow. Back to home is how Wednesday's looking. Low pressure's coming in off the Atlantic on Wednesday, so will be some cloud and rain for the north and west on Wednesday, but not very much, and it'll be dying out through the course of Wednesday as pressure rises from the south. So we go through to the end of next week. High pressure's back in control, sitting over to the east of the country. We're pulling up very mild air from southern climes coming up from the Mediterranean, and that goes on into next weekend too. So this is Saturday next weekend. High pressure is centred over Germany and Poland, and it's bringing in these very mild southerly southeast winds. This is a kind of scenario that could see the maximum temperature record going for February. It's a kind of scenario that could do it. It will depend how much sunshine there is. It will depend where we just start to import some slightly cooler air in from off the continent. Because remember, this is still February. So although the origins of the air might be from the Mediterranean, we only have to tilt the wind around to the southeast very slightly and we'll start to import cooler continental air from sort of central parts of Europe. So we won't know until much closer to the time frame whether that 19.7 temperature record from February 1998 is under threat or not. But this is the kind of scenario that could do it. Dry and very mild, if not warm, then into next weekend, and beyond that into the following week. This is Monday, 25th of February. High pressure again. It's dominating over and to the east of the country. That gets us up towards day 10. Still under this large ridge of high pressure, becoming very flabby by this point. So probably losing the mildest of the temperatures from southern Europe, and I would think maybe increasing the risk of fog perhaps as the isobars are well and truly opening out. This is the 6 o'clock run of the GFS. It's been updating as we've been speaking, so I'll just show you what the rest of the 6 o'clock GFS run did. So as we go towards the end of February, just beginning to start to establish or re-establish a little bit more of an Atlantic flow. Let's go through another couple of days. And again, the west is just beginning to edge back in as the high pressure starts to reposition out into the Atlantic, but not really turning unsettled, you'll notice, still keeping anticyclonic influences going even into the first week of March. That's as far as we get with the GFS run today. It's the 5th of March, and high pressure just out to west-southwest of us, so still really under high pressure, but we have changed the air mass. It's a cooler, maybe even colder air mass that's coming in from the northern Atlantic Ocean. So that will see the temperatures dropping as we go through into the start of March, but not going particularly cold. We're still very, very close to that ridge of high pressure. This is a parallel GFS run. So this one, again, showing high pressure building up from southern Europe as we go into the end of the week. The weekend is dominated by high pressure, bringing the most balmy southerly winds with the air from the Mediterranean. It's going to be very mild next weekend indeed. Up to day 10, we keep that high pressure going, but it is starting to weaken a little bit by day 10 and into more extended range, just beginning to turn a bit more unsettled. That's how we finish up with the parallel GFS run, starting to re-establish those westerly winds, so turning cooler, turning more unsettled through the first week of March. ECMWF, again, the heights are rising to our south as we go into the end of the coming week and into next weekend. High pressures dominating. These sort of charts would not have looked out of place back last summer around May, June, July. These are the kind of charts we were seeing very, very regularly. High pressure sitting across central parts of Europe, pulling in these very mild and balmy southerly winds. I'm not sure we've got quite as much of a southerly with the ECM compared to the GFS, but they're both looking like they're forecasting very, very mild conditions and dry conditions through next weekend. And that goes on up to day 10 too. High pressure just remains anchored and rooted over top of the country up to day 10. Wednesday 27th of February, it remains high and dry with high pressure at 1,030 millibars right over top of the UK. It doesn't look like that high pressure is going anywhere soon. Just have a look at CFS V2 before we go. So these are the 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 17th to the 23rd of February, the coming week with low pressure in the Atlantic, high pressure to our east across central parts of Europe. So we're under high pressure, we're bringing the air up from the south, it's going to be dry and very mild overall, maybe you would say even quite warm. We go through to week 2, which is going to be the 24th of February to the 2nd of March, still with that area of above average heights centred over to the southeast of the country, below average heights in the middle of the Atlantic. Again, we're pulling up the winds from a southerly direction, so it looks very mild, if not quite warm, and we're under that big ridge of high pressure too, so lots of dry conditions continuing right way through to the end of February. Week 3 shows a change, so we start to take the high pressure northwards. We begin to centre it over Greenland with low pressure developing underneath it. So through the first week of March, this is the 3rd to the 9th of March, turning more unsettled. Westerlies are returning, so we'll be cooling down and it'll be turning more unsettled as well. Not sure it's particularly cold, although there is a bit of a blocking signal there over towards Greenland. As we get to week 4, which is the 10th to the 16th of March, actually looking genuinely unsettled then, with low pressure centred out to the west of the country, bringing in westerly winds. It's not cold, but it's certainly a lot more unsettled with that low pressure bringing quite heavy rain in from off the Atlantic Ocean. So the CFS is seeing a change for March. It's seeing something a lot more unsettled and wetter as we get through to March. This is the monthly 500 millibar height anomaly forecast from the CFS model for March, and it is placing a trough of below average heights, low pressure more or less over top of the country. It does have a weak blocking signal up towards Green. I'm not sure it's strong enough to produce anything particularly cold into this trough. Generally, the low pressure will be bringing the winds in from the west, so it looks relatively mild, I think, for March, but it does look much more unsettled compared to what we've been used to recently. Temperature anomalies for March at the moment are shaping up to be very close to average, although most parts of Europe is being forecast to have quite a mild month. I would think temperature anomalies would likely be quite mild, really, with a westerly flow in March. Precipitation anomalies not looking particularly wet, and given the trough but it's placing over the top of the UK there, you would probably expect the precipitation anomaly to be wetter than that. So from a rainfall point of view, perhaps a little bit disappointing if you're waiting for some significant rainfall. Given the trough, the low pressure, but it's centering over the top of the UK, you would probably think that should be a little bit wetter than the CFS is actually showing. So CFS wants to change as we get through to March. It wants to keep very dry, very mild, potentially at times quite warm conditions going through the rest of February. And then it wants to change through the first week of March to something more unsettled. Not necessarily anything colder, probably cooler than we've had through the second half of February due to the change of wind direction from southerlies to westerlies. But that said, not particularly cold signals for March, but just generally more unsettled. That's all very speculative, though. They always try to revert back to their default setup, which is westerly. Particularly the CFS V2 tries to do that, so I wouldn't necessarily take that all that seriously, to be honest. Obviously, at some point, the weather pattern is going to change. We can't keep these ridges going indefinitely. We will get some sort of change, but wouldn't necessarily say that it's going to happen through the first week of March. And coming back to the more reliable time frame, which is next week, 10 days, high pressure's in control, so it remains pretty dry for most parts of the country. There will be some rain in the north and west, particularly Tuesday and Wednesday. Be some wet weather there. There's actually some rain coming into the west today. It's going to turn showery as it pushes across the country and very patchy through the course this afternoon and this evening. But there'll be little bits and pieces of rain around over the next few days. But generally, the general outlook for next week, 10 days, is dry and very mild, if not at times potentially quite warm. We may even break records next weekend. We'll have to keep a close eye on that. Right, don't forget, check out the spring analogues if you haven't yet done so. Coming up this afternoon, we've got the ECMWF, Meteo France and DWD long range update. Then Ensemble's Watch will be with you this evening. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.